You're listening to Airtime of the Geek.
Hello, Ignition Radio listeners, and welcome to Airtime of the Geek. It's Monday, it's just gone 1 p.m. GMT. If you're listening live via our website or via TuneIn, if you're catching up on YouTube, then please like and subscribe to this video and our channel. Comments, queries, suggestions, you can email me. It's Paula B at ignitionradio.co.uk. You can call the studio. It's 01642 329 620. Alternatively, you can go to my website. It's airtimeofthegeek.xyz. So it's October, and every week this month we're going from Airtime of the Geek to Spooky List of the Week, leading all the way up to Halloween for our Halloween Spooktacular. For this week's top 10, I am counting down my top 10 Devils and Demons movies. So, as usual, we will go in reverse order because it's far more fun for me that way, and we're starting with number 10, Legend. Legend is a 1985 fantasy adventure film directed by Ridley Scott, starring Tom Cruise, Mia Sara, Tim Curry, and Tim Curry's massive pair of horns. It is a part of the 80s fantasy boom in film, sharing many of the same elements as its contemporaries. The Lord of Darkness, Tim Curry, plots to cover the world in eternal night. He sends his servants, the Goblin Blix, to kill the light-bearing unicorns and take their horn. The unicorns only appear before the Pure of Heart, so a lure must be used. Enter Jack, played by Cruise, and Princess Lily, Sarah, pure denizens of the forest. When the stallion is killed, Jack and Lily are separated as snowstorms envelop the world. She and the mare are captured by the forces of darkness and must band together with the woodland fairies to rescue her. Number 9 is Rosemary's Baby. A 1967 horror novel by Ira Levin, Rosemary's Baby became much better known as the 1968 film adaptation by Roman I'm Obsessed with Demons Polanski, the second film in the director's so-called apartment trilogy, along with Repulsion and The Tenant. Young housewife Rosemary Woodhouse, played by Mia Farrow, moves into an elegant but gloomy old New York City apartment building with her actor husband Guy. Their new neighbours are Minnie and Roman Castevet, an elderly couple who seem nice enough at first. Shortly after having a very bad dream, she finds herself pregnant, and then things get weird for her. The film version received very high praise for its close following of the novel, going so far as to replicate much of its dialogue word for word. The film's producers, William Castle, once speculated that this was at least partly because Polanski had never done an adaptation before and didn't know he was allowed to make changes. The Bramford where all the action takes place was deliberately modelled on the Dakota in Manhattan, where John Lennon lived and would eventually be murdered. Exterior shots of the Bramford in the film of the area of Dakota, but due to exclusive privacy policies of the building, the interior shots were filmed on a soundstage. Number 8 is Silent Hill. Silent Hill is a film adaptation of the video game Silent Hill. It was directed by French director Christophe Gans and Canadian writer Roger Avery, which also draws inspiration from several of the other Silent Hill games, most notably Silent Hill 2, due to the film's usage of Pyramid Head. Rosa da Silva is played by Rada Mitchell, and she has an adopted daughter named Sharon, who is plagued by nightmares in which she repeatedly shrieks about a town named Silent Hill. Hoping to find some answers, Rose takes Sharon to Silent Hill but crashes a car on the way and soon finds herself amidst a cult that want to get their hands on Sharon for their own nefarious purposes, and things keep getting worse from there. Oddly enough, it's a film that stars Sean Bean, and he doesn't die. Number 7 is The Devil's Advocate. The Devil's Advocate is a 1997 thriller / religious horror starring Keanu Reeves, Al Pacino and Charlize Theron, based on a novel by Andrew Needham. follows the career of Kevin Lomax as he gets entangled with the demonic forces that are trying to help him on the road to success. He ultimately faces off against the origin of this positive influence and the horror of his own origin. The film's title is a reference to the commonly used phrase devil's advocate, and Pacino's character is named after the author of Paradise Lost, John Milton. The movie has some minor allusions to Milton's epic, such as the famous quotation, "Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven." Pacino did not get an Oscar nod for his performance, but many thought he was well missed out. Number 6 is The Ninth Gate. The Ninth Gate is a 1999 movie by, again, Mr. Roman I Like the Devil Polanski. Adapted from The Club du Mas by Arturo Perez Reverte, starring Johnny Depp as Dean Corso, an expert on rare books. A client, Boris Balkan, played by Frank Langella, asks Corso to authenticate his copy of The Nine Gates of the Kingdom of Shadows. The fictional book has 3 surviving copies, due to the rest being burned in 1666 along with its author, because the book is supposedly an adaptation of another book, The Demolonicon, written by Lucifer himself. As Corso attempts to figure out which of the 3 copies is the genuine one, he discovers that the Nine Gates has a purpose. When used correctly, the book will raise the devil himself and grant the summoner great supernatural power. Corso is not the only person who has figured this out and is chased by others who want the power and protected by a mysterious girl, played by Emmanuelle Sanger. The deeper Corso delves into the mystery of the book, the deeper the pile of bodies left behind becomes. That, of course, is the movie. In the book, Corso has 2 missions. One is to try and authenticate his copy of Vara Borgia's copy of The Nine Gates of the Kingdom of Shadows, and the other involves the Anjou wine, a chapter from the original manuscript of The Three Musketeers by Alexandre Dumas. This manuscript was once owned by the late Enrique Telfer, a millionaire who specialised in cookbooks. He killed himself while travelling around Europe on his mission. He finds himself being stalked by a man and a woman who look uncannily like Milady de Winter and Comte de Rochefort. What do these 2 strangers want with him, and what is the connection between the Three Musketeers and the devil? Well, in the book it turns out to be not that much, but this film is actually one of my absolute favourite all-time book-to-film translations. While the film version cuts out almost all references to the Three Musketeers, it's actually a fairly faithful adaptation. The Three Musketeers plotline, while it works in the book, doesn't work so much in a film medium because a lot of it involves the text. So I highly recommend this movie if you've got a bit of time. Comments, queries, suggestions, you can email me. It's paulab@ignitionradio.co.uk. You can also call the studio. It's 01642 329 620, or you can check out my website. It's airtimeofthegeek.xyz. Continuing on with the countdown of my top 10 Demons and Devils movie. Number 5 is A Nightmare on Elm Street. The Nightmare on Elm Street film franchise centres around slasher movie icon Freddy Krueger, played by Robert Englund in every film except the 2010 reboot, which was an utter pile of trash. His exploits in the killing of teenagers in Springwood have continued for decades. Directed and written by Wes Craven, the original film, Heather Langenkamp plays Nancy Thompson, an average teenage girl who has nightmares for several successive nights. Her friends, including Johnny Depp, in his first acting role ever, end up murdered one by one in their sleep by the same man Nancy sees in her nightmares, a badly burned man who wears a red and green striped shirt and wears a knifed glove, calling himself Freddy Krueger. Nancy confronts her mother, who tells her that Krueger was a child murderer known as the Springwood Slasher, and he died due to a result of a vigilante murder by the parents of his victims after a botched police investigation let Freddy go free. Freddy wants revenge against his killers, so he decides to kill the children of those parents in their dreams, where their parents can't protect them. Can Nancy stop Freddy once and for all? Well, since several sequels followed this one can only assume that no, you can't. Everyone knows that the best ones are, of course, though, the original film, Dream Warriors, and Freddy vs. Jason. You can watch the others, but this is pretty much the ones worth watching. Number 4, Wishmaster. Once in a time before God breathed life into the universe, and light gave birth to angels, and the earth gave birth to man, and the fire gave birth to the jinn. creatures condemned to dwell in the void between worlds. One who wakes a jinn will be given 3 wishes. Upon the granting of the 3rd, the unholy legions of the jinn will be free to rule the earth. Fear one thing, only in all there is, fear the jinn. Wishmaster is a series of horror films about an evil genie. In ancient Arabian legend, the jinn were almost nothing like the genies we know today. They were demons, beings created from smokeless fire. The jinn were incredibly powerful beings who nonetheless could sometimes be trapped in various items and enslaved. The Wishmaster films, while not sticking perfectly to Arabian lore, were intended to re-grimify the genie myth. Did they succeed? Undoubtedly, for those who have actually seen the film. The films were famous for including cameos by many famous horror actors, the original film having cameos from Robert Englund from the Freddy Krueger series, Kane Hodder from the Jason films, Tony Todd from Candyman, other actors as well. The jinn in this particular movie isn't that pernickety about people making wishes. He generally tends to ask people, do you want this? And if they give even the slightest of nods, he counts it as a wish. So he's a cheater, but they're very, very scary films. Number 3 is one of my favourite all-time films, Crossroads. Not the Britney Spears one. Crossroads is a 1986 musical drama film inspired by the legend of blues musician Robert Johnson, starring Karate Kid Ralph Macchio. According to legend, as a young man living on a plantation in rural Mississippi, Johnson had a tremendous desire to become a great blues musician. He was instructed to take his guitar to a crossroads near Doherty Plantation at night. There he was met by a large man, who was actually the devil, who took the guitar and tuned it. The devil played a few songs and then returned the guitar to Johnson, giving him mastery of the instrument. This was, in effect, a deal with the devil, mirroring the legend of Faust. In exchange for his soul, Johnson was able to create blues for which he became famous. Eugene Martone, the Lightning Boy, is a lover of blues. He studies guitar in Juilliard, but is indeed looking for the 13th unknown song of Robert Johnson. One day he meets Willie Brown, the blind dog, in an old folks home, and is convinced that he possesses the lost song. Eugene helps Willie to escape the old folks asylum and goes with him to Mississippi. They can just afford to bus a ticket from New York to halfway to Mississippi, so the rest of their journey is hitchhiking. On the way, they meet Frances, a girl who left home who wishes to be a dancer in LA. The 3 together pass through many strange adventures and situations, and in the climax is a guitar duel between Eugene and the Devil's Apprentice, played by the absolutely wonderful Stevie Vai. Stevie Vai is a technical guitarist and actually played all of the guitar pieces throughout the movie, Ralph Macchio learning the fingering for it, as it would have taken him years to actually master actually playing the music. Number 2 is The Omen. The Omen is a 1976 suspense horror film directed by Richard Donner. The film stars Gregory Peck, Lee Remick, David Warner, the incomparable David Warner, only playing one role in this film, Harvey Stevens, Billy Whitelaw, Patrick Troughton, Martin Benson and Leo McKern. The film was scripted by David Seltzer, who also wrote the novelisations, and it spawned a film series. Robert Thorne, played by Peck, when his wife delivered a stillborn child, was approached by a priest with the offer of an infant whose mother experienced a death by childbirth. He agreed to the switch, and his wife was blissfully unaware of the truth. Several years later, Robert becomes the American ambassador to England, and the Thorne family moves into a large manor there. And that's when mysterious deaths and odd events begin to plague the Thornes and those in their orbit, especially those who attempt to convince them that little Damien is not all that he seems. And number 1 on my Demons and Devils playlist is Hellraiser, starring Doug Bradley and the incomparable Andrew Robinson. Hellraiser is a 1987 horror film directed by Clive Barker based on his novella The Hellbound Heart. It is the first film of the Hellraiser series. Somewhere in the Orient, the hedonistic Frank Cotton acquires a puzzle box from a mysterious Chinese man. At his home in London, he eventually figures out the configuration before he is dragged off by unseen forces. Sometime later, his brother Larry and Larry's second wife Julia visit the house. With Frank seemingly gone, they decide to move in. By accident, some of Larry's blood is spilt on the floor in the attic, and Frank rises from the dead as a skinless undead human. He tells Julia, with whom he had an affair in the past, that he has escaped from a dimension ruled by beings called Cenobites, who merge the boundaries between pleasure and pain and convince her to keep it a secret from Larry and find men from him to feed off. Meanwhile, Larry's daughter Kirsty discovers the puzzle box and comes face to face with the Cenobites, who are interested in getting Frank back to their realm. That was my top 10 Devils and Demons. If you have any comments, queries, suggestions, you can email me. It's paulab@ignitionradio.co.uk. You can call the studio. It's 01642 329 620, or check out my website, airtimeofgeek.xyz. If you're catching up on YouTube, then please like and subscribe to this video and our channel. That's everything from this week for Airtime of the Geek. Next week we'll be back with another spooky themed top 10 as we are counting down to the Halloween Spooktacular. I will see you this time next week.